For 11 days, a boy sat on the sidewalk outside a film studio in Burbank and tried to sell drawings he had made himself. Pencil on copy paper. 30 cents each. He had a cardboard sign, hand-lettered in blue marker, that said, "Art for sale, all prices fair." He had a plastic folder to keep the rain off them, even though it had not rained in 3 weeks. He had a small tin that had once held mints, which he used as a cash box, and which held at the end of the 11th day $1.20. His name was Marcus, and he was 9 years old, and he had been coming to this sidewalk every morning before school and every afternoon after it, because his father had been laid off 7 weeks ago, and his mother was working double shifts at a diner on San Fernando Road, and nobody had told him he couldn't help. So he had decided to help the only way he knew how. He had been moved along by the studio security guard 3 times. Each time he had walked to the corner, waited, and come back. On the morning of the 12th day, a man in a gray jacket and dark jeans walked out of the studio's side entrance, stopped in front of the cardboard sign, and crouched down to look at the drawings in the plastic folder. He looked at them for a long time. Then he looked at Marcus. He asked one question. What happened next, in the 4 weeks that followed that question, would change the direction of a 9-year-old boy's life, and would say something about what art is actually for, and would leave a woman named Rosa Diaz, who watched the whole thing from behind the studio's reception desk window, unable to explain it to anyone without her voice doing something she had not planned. There is a film and television production studio on Olive Avenue in Burbank, California, called Meridian Soundstage. It is not the largest studio in the city, and it is not the most famous. What it is consistently busy. 3 sound stages, a scoring stage that music supervisors fly in from New York to use, 2 edit suites, and a production office that runs on the particular focused energy of a place that has been doing this long enough to have stopped being impressed by itself. The studio sits behind a perimeter wall of pale concrete block, 8 feet tall, with a main vehicle gate on Olive Avenue and a pedestrian entrance beside it. A metal door, painted the same institutional gray as the wall, with a buzzer and a small camera mounted above it. The sidewalk runs along the outside of the wall on the Olive Avenue side for about 40 yards before it reaches the corner. In 11 years, the sidewalk had held food trucks on permitted days, a woman selling orchids from a folding table on Saturdays, a man who had been drawing caricatures of passing studio employees for tips until the guard asked him to move on, and now, for 11 days, a boy with a plastic folder and a mint tin. The street was not heavily trafficked at the hours Marcus was there. Morning arrivals came through the vehicle gate mostly. Crew members, drivers, production assistants, and they were moving fast, in that particular morning crew way of people who are late to something that started at 6. Afternoon departures were scattered. The sidewalk, for all its length, was not a high-volume foot traffic zone. It was, however, visible from the reception desk window. Rosa Diaz had been the studio's front desk receptionist for 6 years. She was 34, meticulous, and had the specific competence of someone who managed a great deal of complexity without ever appearing to be managing anything at all. She handled visitor sign-ins, package deliveries, phone routing, the scheduling of the pedestrian entrance camera, and, unofficially, without title or additional compensation, the general emotional temperature of the front-of-house operation. She had noticed Marcus on the 3rd day. She had watched him from the window each morning and afternoon since. She had seen him moved along twice by the security guard on duty, a man named Carl Briggs, 47 years old, 10 years at the studio, who ran the gate with the efficient firmness of someone who had clear instructions and followed them. No solicitation on studio property. The sidewalk was adjacent to studio property, not technically part of it. but Carl had a broad interpretation of adjacent. Rosa had considered saying something to Carl. She had not. The boy was not causing trouble. He was just there, and there was something in his being there. The consistency of it, the blue marker sign, the mint tin, the plastic folder protecting drawings that, from a distance, she could not quite see clearly, that she had found herself thinking about during slow patches in the day. On the morning of the 12th day, at 7:53, she saw him set up his sign. 8 minutes later, she saw a man in a gray jacket come out of the side entrance and stop. You need to understand something about Carl Briggs before you understand the 3 times he moved Marcus along. He was 47 years old and had been working security at Meridian Soundstage for a decade, and in that decade he had developed a relationship with the studio's perimeter that was something between professional and personal. He knew every inch of the Olive Avenue wall. He knew which section of the vehicle gate track needed oil in winter. He knew that the camera above the pedestrian entrance had a blind spot at the upper left, and had flagged it in 3 consecutive quarterly reports. He had grown up in Reseda, in a neighborhood that had been improving steadily for 15 years and had not quite finished improving when he was a boy, which meant that his childhood had been spent in the awareness of a distinction between the people the improvement was for and the people who were already there. His family had been the latter. His father had worked nights at a warehouse in Van Nuys and had been, by any measure, a good man, steady, present, undemonstrative in a way that was not coldness, but the specific economy of a man who spent his energy where it was needed and did not have an abundance to spare. Carl had understood this. He had also understood, from watching his father navigate the particular exhaustions of shift work in a city that moved around you rather than with you, that the world had a way of asking people without leverage to accommodate themselves to its convenience. He had not wanted to be that kind of person. He had wanted to be, instead, the kind of person who held the line, who had a jurisdiction and kept it clear, whose reliability was something the people above him could count on. The studio had given him that. 10 years of it. He knew the rules, and he applied them consistently, and he had a record that the operations manager had described in his last annual review as exemplary. The no solicitation rule applied to the immediate vicinity of the studio's perimeter. Carl had a broad interpretation of immediate vicinity because a broad interpretation was the only one that prevented the vicinity from becoming an argument every time someone wanted an exception. He had moved the boy along on 3 separate days. The first time, he had been straightforward. "Son, you can't sell things here. This is private property." Marcus had said, "The sidewalk is public." Carl had looked at him. 9 years old, blue marker sign, mint tin. He had been thrown briefly by the accuracy of this. The sidewalk was public. He had recovered. The sidewalk is adjacent to private property. You're disrupting access. Marcus had looked at the sidewalk, which was empty in both directions. Then he had picked up his folder and his sign and walked to the corner. Carl had watched him go and had felt, briefly, the specific discomfort of a man who has done a technically correct thing and is not certain it was the right one. He had filed the feeling where he filed most things that did not have a clear resolution and moved on. The second and third times had been easier, because by the third time it was a pattern, and patterns required less deliberation. What he had not told himself, in any of the 3 instances, was the full truth of what he had seen when he looked at the boy. The full truth was that he had seen a child doing something that his own father would have recognized. Not the drawing, but the trying. The specific trying of someone who does not have good options and is working with what they have. He had not told himself that. He had told himself, The rule is the rule. On the morning of the 12th day, Carl was at the vehicle gate when the man in the gray jacket came out of the side entrance and crouched down next to the cardboard sign. The man crouched down on the sidewalk the way someone crouches when they intend to be at eye level and have no concerns about what this looks like from the street. He opened the plastic folder. The drawings were pencil on copy paper, as described. But from 6 inches away, they were something else. Careful, specific, detailed in a way that 9-year-old drawings rarely are. There were buildings with precise windows, a motorcycle with the chain visible between the sprockets, a dog that was not a generic dog but a specific dog, with a torn ear and a particular way of holding its head. A woman at a stove with steam rising from a pot, her face in 3/4 profile, catching light from a window the viewer could not see. He looked at them for a long time. Then he looked at Marcus. Marcus looked back at him. He had learned in 11 days not to oversell. People who were going to buy, bought. People who were not going to be convinced by anything he said. "How long have you been drawing?" the man asked. Marcus thought about it. "Always," he said. "Did someone teach you?" "No." The man looked at the drawing of the woman at the stove. "Is that your mom?" "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. He looked at the tin. $1.20, visible through the clear lid. "How much for the one of the dog?" he said. 30 cents. He did not reach for his wallet yet. He looked at Marcus with the attentive expression of someone who has decided this conversation is the thing that matters right now. "What's the money for?" he asked. It was the one question. Marcus looked at him. He had been asked, across 11 days, a version of this question 3 times, by a woman who bought 2 drawings, by a man who bought 1 and then didn't, and by a crew member who had asked and then kept walking when the light changed. He had answered it each time in the minimal way he had developed, "For my family." 2 words. Enough. He looked at this man, gray jacket, dark jeans, crouched on the sidewalk in the early morning like someone who had nowhere to be and had decided that here was where he wanted to be. And something about the way the question had been asked made the minimal answer feel insufficient. "My dad lost his job," Marcus said. 7 weeks ago. "He's looking, but it's taking a while. My mom is working extra shifts, but it's not enough yet." He looked at the tin. "I'm trying to help." The man did not say, "That's so sweet." He did not say, "You're a good kid." He did not say any of the things adults said when they were moved by something a child had said and did not know what to do with the feeling. He said, "Can I see the one of the motorcycle?" Marcus found it in the folder. The man held it by the edge, carefully, the way you hold something you do not want to crease. "How long did this take you?" 2 hours, Marcus said. "Maybe 2.5. 2.5 hours, the man said. He looked at it. "And you're selling it for 30 cents. People don't want to pay more." "People haven't been offered more," the man said. He set the drawing down gently on top of the folder. "I'd like to buy all of them," he said. "But I want to pay the right price, not 30 cents each. Can you tell me how long each one took?" Marcus stared at him. Carl had crossed the vehicle gate to the pedestrian entrance side when he saw the man crouching on the sidewalk. He recognized the gray jacket, a studio regular, someone who came in several times a month, usually in the morning. He had not placed the name. He knew the face. He walked toward them. "Sir," he said. He addressed it to the man, not the boy. "I need to let you know, this individual has been asked to move along on several occasions. If you're purchasing, I'm purchasing," the man said. He did not look up from the drawing of the woman at the stove. "How many do you have?" he asked Marcus. 14, Marcus said. He was watching Carl with the expression of someone who has been moved along 3 times and is waiting to find out if it is about to happen again. "Carl," the man said. Carl stopped. He looked at the man, still crouching, still not looking at him. "The sidewalk is public," the man said. "He's not on studio property. He's not blocking access." He looked up now, and his expression was not unkind. It was simply certain, in the way that people are certain when they have looked at something and found the edges of it. "You know that." Carl said nothing. "He's been here for 11 days, the man said. "How many times have you moved him on?" 3, Carl said. 3 times. He looked at the tin. $1.20. The number landed the way specific numbers land, not as accusation, but as evidence. The particular math of 11 days and 3 relocations, and $1.20. "I have a rule," Carl started. "The rule is no solicitation on studio property," the man said. "He's not on studio property." He stood up. He was about the same height as Carl and looked at him with the same quality of attention he had given the drawings. Interested, patient, not going anywhere. The rule isn't the problem. The interpretation is. Carl looked at Marcus. Marcus was holding his plastic folder against his chest and watching the two of them with an expression that was careful and controlled, and, underneath the control, frightened. The expression of a child who has learned that adults sometimes resolve things over your head in directions you did not expect. "Tell me something," the man said to Carl. Quietly, not for Marcus to hear. "When you were his age, if you'd had something you could make and sell, something real, something that took 2.5 hours per piece, and someone kept moving you along, what would you have thought about that?" Carl was very still. He looked at the boy. He looked at the tin. He looked at the man in the gray jacket and understood, in a way that arrived slowly and then all at once, who he was looking at. The recognition was not dramatic. It arrived the way recognition arrives when you have been looking at a face in a context you did not expect it, and your mind has been filing it under wrong until it finally files it under right. "Mr. Reeves," he said. "Carl," Keanu said. "Let him stay." Rosa Diaz had been watching from the reception window. She had seen the crouching. She had seen Carl approach. She had seen the conversation, the specific quality of it, the lack of raised voices, the way Keanu had looked at Carl when he said the thing he said, which she could not hear through the glass but could read in the shape of. She had seen Carl look at the boy. She had seen Carl nod. Then she had picked up the phone and called the main studio line and asked for the production office, and when someone picked up she had said, "Someone needs to come to the front entrance. Bring a portfolio case if there is one." There was one. Keanu came inside at 8:31, leaving Marcus on the sidewalk with a promise that he would be back in 20 minutes. He was back in 17. He had a conversation in between that Rosa had been part of, and that she would think about for a long time afterward. He had come to the reception desk first. "How long has he been coming?" he asked. 11 days, Rosa said. "Every morning before school. Every afternoon after." Keanu looked at the window. Marcus was visible on the sidewalk, reorganizing his folder. "Did you know about the father?" "Not until today," Rosa said. "I could see he was selling something, but I couldn't see what." Keanu looked at her. "Why didn't you go out and look?" It was not an accusation. It was the same genuine question he had asked Marcus, the one that expected an actual answer. Rosa was quiet for a moment. "I told myself it wasn't my place," she said, "that Carl was handling it. Carl was moving him along. I know." She said it simply. No defense. Just the plain acknowledgement that she had watched something for 11 days and had told herself a story about it that had kept her on the inside of a window What would you have done, Keanu said, if you had gone out and looked? Rosa thought about it. I don't know, she said. I would have bought something. I would have talked to him. She paused. I would have known his name. Keanu looked at her for a moment. His name is Marcus, he said. He's 9. He draws the way some people play an instrument, like he was built for it and didn't need to be taught. He looked at the window, and he has been sitting on that sidewalk for 11 days, trying to help his family, and the only response this building gave him was being told to move along. Rosa looked at the window. I'm going to need something from you, Keanu said. Okay, not a big thing. I need you to go out there this afternoon when he comes back from school and spend 20 minutes with him. Not to buy anything, to look. To actually look at what he's made. He looked at her. Can you do that? Yes, she said. And I need Carl to go with you. She looked at him. Carl? He needs to see it too, Keanu said. He's been making a decision based on a rule without knowing what the rule was costing. That's different from making a decision knowing what it costs. He paused. Give him the chance to know. He went to the production office. He made 2 calls. He was back on the sidewalk in 17 minutes with a portfolio case under his arm and 3 $20 bills folded in his jacket pocket. Marcus looked at the portfolio case. It was black, clamshell design, 24 by 18 inches, with a zipper around 3 sides and a handle on the top. It was the kind of case that artists use to carry work to galleries. Marcus had seen one in a YouTube video once. For your drawings, Keanu said, so they don't get bent. Marcus held it. He held it the way you hold something that is too good to put down and too real to completely believe. I counted 14 drawings, Keanu said. I wrote down the times you told me for each one. Total is about 29 hours of work. He crouched down to Marcus's level. 29 hours. At 30 cents each, that's $4.20. Marcus looked at him. That's not the right price, Keanu said. You know that. People haven't been asked the right price, Keanu said. He took the 3 $20 bills from his jacket. $60. He held them out. This is for the 14 drawings. That's a little over $2 per hour, which is still too low, but it's a start. He looked at Marcus. I want the one of your mom. And the motorcycle and the dog with the torn ear. Marcus looked at the bills. He did not take them immediately. That's too much, he said. It isn't, Keanu said. You're just being. I'm paying for 29 hours of real work, Keanu said. He said it with a finality that was not unkind, but was not open to negotiation. That is what it costs. Take it. Marcus took it. He held the $60 in one hand and the portfolio case in the other, and stood on the sidewalk on Olive Avenue in Burbank at 8:48 in the morning, and his face did something that was not quite crying, and was not quite not. One more thing, Keanu said. He reached into the portfolio case. He had put something inside before he brought it out. A card, plain white, studio address, a phone number handwritten on the back in black ink. My studio runs a Saturday program for young people who want to learn film production, cinematography, editing, sound. He looked at Marcus. There's a drawing component this quarter. They're looking for someone to teach the other kids what they know about composition. He held out the card. I thought of someone. Marcus looked at the card. He looked at Keanu. I'm 9, he said. I know, Keanu said. The other students are 8 to 11. You'd be a peer instructor. 1 Saturday a month. He looked at the sidewalk. You can bring the portfolio case. He stood up. He picked up the 3 drawings, the mother at the stove, the motorcycle, the dog, and held them as carefully as he had held them the first time. "Thank you," he said. It was addressed to Marcus, not performed for anyone watching. He went back inside. Marcus stood on the sidewalk. He opened the portfolio case. He put the remaining 11 drawings inside, in the sleeves, one by one, the way you put something into a place where it will be safe. He zipped it shut. He picked it up by the handle. It was 10 minutes before his school bus came. Rosa went out at 3:47 that afternoon. Carl came with her. He had not said much about the morning. He had gone back to the vehicle gate after the conversation and had run the rest of his shift with his usual precision, and if something in him had shifted, it had shifted in the quiet way that things shift in men who do not process things outwardly. Marcus was back at 3:38, portfolio case propped against the wall, new drawings already laid out. He had made 4 more during school, in the margins of a notebook, which he had transferred to copy paper at lunch. Rosa sat on the low concrete step beside him. She went through the folder. She went through it slowly. She was not being polite. She was genuinely looking, in the way that Keanu had told her to look. And the looking was doing what real looking does when you have been not looking for 11 days and then you stop and pay attention. The new drawings were different from the ones Keanu had described. There was a soundstage, clearly Meridian Stage 2, with the loading dock and the light rig visible through the open door. There was the vehicle gate, rendered in detail, with the latch mechanism accurate to the actual latch. There was the reception window. Rosa recognized it. She recognized the shape of herself in the figure behind it, looking out. She looked at Marcus. "You drew me," she said. "You were always there," he said. "I could see you through the window." She looked at the drawing. The figure behind the window was looking out with an expression that was, she had to sit with this, unmistakably wistful, not sad. Wistful, the expression of someone who is on the inside of something and watching the outside. She had not known she was making that expression. She looked at Carl. Carl was holding the drawing of the vehicle gate. He was looking at the latch mechanism, which Marcus had drawn with the accuracy of a 9-year-old who had been looking at it for 11 days from 4 feet away. "Kid," Carl said. He said it quietly, without any of the professional firmness that had characterized the 3 previous conversations. "This is very good." Marcus looked at him. Carl looked at the drawing. He looked at Marcus. "I'm sorry," he said, "for moving you along." He said it plainly, without building to it. "You weren't doing anything wrong." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You were doing your job," he said. Carl held his gaze. "I was," he said. "That's not the same thing as being right about it." Rosa bought 4 drawings that afternoon. She paid $5 each. She told Marcus that $5 was the floor, that nothing under $5 was acceptable, and that if anyone offered him less, he should say so and mean it. Marcus wrote $5 each, minimum on a new piece of blue marker cardboard, that afternoon, and put it in front of the folder. Over the following 4 weeks, 3 things happened. The first, Keanu arranged for Marcus to join the Saturday program. His first session, 3 weeks later, was a 4-hour introduction to composition, angle, light, framing, taught by a cinematographer named David Park, who had been at the studio for 6 years, and who spent the first 40 minutes of the session looking at Marcus's drawings and then restructured the entire lesson around them. The second, Marcus's father found work. Not at the end of the 4 weeks, at the end of the second week, through a construction foreman who had been referred by a neighbor, a contract job in Glendale that started at $42 an hour. The timing had nothing to do with the sidewalk, or the $60, or the Saturday program. It just happened, the way things sometimes happen when you are in the middle of something else. But Marcus did not stop coming to the Saturday program. He came every month for 14 months, through the rest of that school year and all of the next. He was the youngest person in every session. He was also, David Park told anyone who asked, the most patient, the one who looked longest before he committed anything to paper, the one who asked questions that were several steps further along than the other students, the one who drew the other students while they weren't watching and produced portraits that made them stop and look at themselves differently. In the 3rd week of his 8th month, Marcus brought in a drawing of Carl. He had done it from memory. Carl at the gate, in 3/4 profile, with the particular stance of a man who knows his perimeter and holds it. The detail was specific, the way the uniform jacket sat on his shoulders, the set of his jaw, the look in his eyes that was, and this was the part that David Park put up on the wall and kept there for 2 years. Neither stern nor soft, but something in between, something that was trying to be both. Carl had not seen it. Rosa had taken a photograph and sent it to him. He had called Rosa the next morning. He had not said much. He had said, "Tell him thank you." Rosa had told him. Marcus had said, "He's welcome." He said it the way Keanu had said thank you on the sidewalk, simply, without performance, to the person it was for, and no one else. 3 years later, Marcus was 12 years old and had a folder of work that was no longer copy paper, but proper sketch paper his mother had bought him for his birthday. And he had been accepted to a visual arts middle school in Los Feliz that had a 6-month application process and had accepted 9 students from a pool of 61. On the day he found out, he went to the sidewalk on Olive Avenue after school. He stood there for a few minutes. He was not selling anything. He did not have a sign. He just stood on the sidewalk where he had stood for 11 days when he was 9, with a portfolio case that had been black once and was now worn at 2 corners from 3 years of carrying. And he thought about the man who had crouched down and asked one question and waited for the real answer. Then he went home to tell his parents. I keep coming back to the question. Not the $60, not the portfolio case, though that is the image I return to most, a 9-year-old on a sidewalk in Burbank, holding something that said, "What you make has a home." Not the Saturday program, or the art school, or any of the things that came after. The question, what's the money for? 4 words, the kind of question that has a short answer available. For my family. 2 words, enough, and a real answer that is longer and costs something to give. Marcus gave the real answer. But he gave it because of how the question was asked. Because he had been asked it by someone who had crouched down to sidewalk level, who had looked at the drawings first, who was not in a hurry and was not performing interest but actually had it. Most of us walk past. Not because we are cruel, because we are somewhere, and there is something between where we are and the thing on the sidewalk, and the thing on the sidewalk requires us to stop. And stopping requires us to decide, in the space of a few steps, whether the thing we were doing before was more important than the thing that is here, now, asking for nothing except to be looked at. Most of the time, what we were doing before wins. I have been thinking about Rosa and the window. She had watched for 11 days. She had felt something. She said so. She named it. She could describe exactly what she had been thinking during the slow patches of the day. And she had stayed at the window. She had told herself it wasn't her place. That Carl was handling it. Carl was moving him along. There is a gap between watching something and doing something about it that most of us live in most of the time. It is a comfortable gap. It has reasonable explanations available. It is not the same as not caring. But it is also not the same as going outside. What I find most worth sitting with is not the famous person in the story. It is the 9-year-old who came back for 12 days, who walked to the corner and waited and returned, who did not stop because the response was no and no and no, because the alternative to not stopping was going home without the $1.20, and that was not an option he was willing to choose. That kind of stubbornness, the kind that is not anger, just quiet and persistent refusal to give up on something real, is not something anyone teaches. It is something that is already in a person, waiting for someone to see it. He just needed one person to crouch down. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known reputation for stopping, genuinely stopping, when most people keep walking. If something in it stayed with you, drop a comment. Tell me about the thing you walked past and kept thinking about. If you know someone who is sitting on a sidewalk with something real that nobody has stopped to see, share this with them. As a story, not an instruction. Subscribe. There are more people on more sidewalks. See you in the next one.